Hello, everyone. This is Bentley from Kent, Washington, and today we're going to do something a little different. I would like to kind of explain to you guys my fish story while you watch just some background video of some of the rainbows around the house. I originally kind of told this story on the fish room tour with Alex over at Secret History Living in Your Aquarium, but I've had such a just massive increase in subscribers that you might not have seen that video, and I'd like to kind of go over because I want you guys to better understand me as a person. As I guess we'd say a thanks because I never thought my YouTube channel would ever get over like 1,000 subscribers, um, let alone as quickly as it has, which is very humbling and at the same time doesn't feel real. It's one of those things where I'm like, really, that many people are interested in my crazy theories on plants for profit and my crazy rainbow fish addiction. um, I know what it is. It's the guppies. I know. It's okay. It's okay. It's because of the guppies. But I just kind of want to go over that, of course, whether it's through Joel's tours that he's been doing or Jimmy's absolute masterclass in how to make amazing videos out of glare covered fish tanks in sunlight, or the Aquarius podcast with Randy. Um, I just kind of want to give that story. So let's start. I have been interested in fish longer than I can remember. There's this great picture that my mother has of my uncle holding me as I think I was like 8 or 9 months old, staring up in wonder at this 125-gallon fish tank that was in our living room as I was growing up with my parents in the background. I can't remember that at all. I was way too young. But even then, I was just enthralled by fish. And my aunt will tell me stories of how um, when I was like fussy or something like that because I was tired, she would take me over to the fish tank and I would just watch the fish and I would calm down and eventually go to sleep. and I can't remember any of these things because they're before I was young, but the first major memory I have of fish is as a kid. I couldn't have been more than maybe 4 or 5 years old. My dad took this old glass lemonade container, think like a Gatorade pitcher or something like that, a sports drink pitcher, and is glass with this yellow flower pattern on the outside. And he turned it upside down, removed the little plastic spigot bit, and put a little air-powered breeder box filter in there, and then filled it with male fancy guppies, so that I had this beautiful display of color in my room as a child. And then from there, we had several tanks around the house. Like we had the 125-gallon I mentioned, which eventually my parents let me select all the fish that went in that. And this kind of speaks to what I like even today. Is I picked longfin zebradenos, both normal and green tiger barbs, which those should not be with longfin fish, but somehow it worked. They never nipped at the fins. It was very lucky. We had angelfish, we had neon tetras. I'm pretty sure we had a harlequin rasbora or something like that. Lots of schooling fish. I can remember that this tank had each of the schools was at least 20 to 30 fish when I was a kid. And my dad really believed in filtering things very heavily, which has kind of gone to me as an adult. And then downstairs, my dad had this beautiful 300-gallon tank full of koi. And I mentioned when I went to the Nozomi Young Koi show that I have an appreciation for koi from my father and remembering them as a kid. So this was kind of what I grew up around, and slowly but surely, as we lost some fish, some of those tanks went away. But then they went to my aunt's house, and my aunt did African cichlids, and she had all these Malawi and Tanganyikan cichlids, Frontosas, the Mobunas, the peacocks, all over the place. Her house was just tons and tons of fish tanks, similar to what mine was as a kid. And we still had fish tanks at the house. We never kind of stopped keeping fish until I was in college. And then we can go all the way back to, so my mom and my aunt, their sisters, my great grandmother, so their grandmother, used to breed Scolari angelfish back in the 50s and 60s. Um, so it kind of tells you like how far back fish go in my family. And my uncle's also interested in fish, my dad's brother, the one that was holding me in that picture I mentioned. But, he wasn't as into fish as my dad. So needless to say, you can see where like I really got into fish because of my family, because fish have always been very popular in my family. Uh, so we've kind of flashed through, kept lots of schooling community fish until college. College, my cousin started working for Petco as their reptile and aquatic specialist. Now he was more a reptile guy, but he had kept fish and he knew a little bit. and he kind of relied on me for extra information when he didn't know stuff. So he was like, I want to do a fish tank. I want to do like big South American cichlids, so big for us at least, not like Dovai or anything like that. But he wanted a Jack Dempsey, and he wanted like a Red Devil and stuff like that. So we had this 55-gallon bow front with a Jack Dempsey, Red Devil, some Bala sharks, some tinfoil barbs. Really just a mess of a tank, let's be honest. But that was kind of his love, and it it rekindled a different love for fish in that like I was not really into the aggressive fish, even though I loved the personality of like the Jack Dempsey cichlid. But it reminded me like, man, I miss my small community fish, but I was too poor. I was in college. I couldn't afford like doing another tank. Eventually, that thing busts a seam in the front down to the bottom, which some bow fronts just tend to do. In that era, it was much more common, unfortunately. It was just a problem in the construction. So eventually, we couldn't afford to replace it, so we went and had the a local store take our cichlids. We donated them to that shop. They, of course, were like, "Hey, we can't give you any money." And we're like, "Yeah, we just want them to have a home and not die in buckets." And that tank was left dry. My cousin kept saying, I'm going to reseal it and we'll redo it again and we'll do something else. And we kind of never got around to it because we were poor. And it was always like, well, we could either buy silicone to reseal the tank or, we could eat dinner tonight. And dinner always won, as college kids. But so eventually I spent like 10 years out of the hobby after that. And randomly 2 years ago, 2016, a suggestion came up in my YouTube of continuity from the Green Machine and James Finley, which is this beautiful shallow tank with this red stone and tons of green plant work. And I started watching and I was like, man, this is like aquatic Bob Ross. And I love watching Bob Ross paint just because it's like the most soothing thing in the world. And Green Machine for me is like the aquatic version of that. Also Tank Tested, another fantastic channel if you've never watched that. Amazing channel for that kind of stuff. 2 days later, I've gone through 3 years of their content, and I've found a couple other fish YouTubers because of YouTube's algorithm. Most notably, like I'd found Dustin's Fish Tanks, I had found Aquarium Co-op, I had found King of DIY, and then a few others I wasn't quite a fan of. But the one that I watched the most was Corey's channel at Aquarium Co-op because I loved his like Day in the Life of the Fish Store series. I really got hooked on that. I was watching tons of it where he would go around his fish room in the fish store and kind of explain from a store owner's perspective the fish hobby. I was really into that because I've always kind of been into, I'm kind of a business minded person in the grand scheme of things, although I don't apply that very heavily to my hobby. Those are just things that interest me because I used to work in marketing and merchandising. So it just kind of, it pings on a lot of things that interest me. So I decided I have to have fish back in my life. I have a house. I've been living in my own house for several years now. I've got a good stable job in the industry, and I want to get back into fish. Well, then not very long after that, I was unemployed. And still into fish. So that was a rough little spat. But needless to say, like I'd started with this little 15-gallon Fluval Flex, and the next day on OfferUp, I'd found what is now my big Rainbow Community tank, and I bought that for what I considered a steal, and the rest is kind of history. So when I went to build this tank, which we're looking at now, I was going to put out tons and tons of small community fish in it. I was going to go back to those roots. But I had mentioned at Aquarium Co-op at the shop that I wanted to get into rainbow fish because I'd watched Gary Lang's fish room tour with Corey, and I was just like, I have to have these things. I saw Boesemani rainbow fish, and I'd never seen rainbow fish as a kid. I'd always seen discus as like the big, cool freshwater fish that was semi-peaceful. And then of course angels, which are big in my family. But I'd never seen rainbows, and now I've seen this in Gary's fish tour, and it's like I gotta have this fish. It's so amazing. It's bright, beautiful. It's like saltwater fish and freshwater. I gotta have these things. Allie from Aquarium Co-op calls me. Says, "Hey, somebody broke down their fish tank, and it's full of adult rainbows. It's gonna be in quarantine for a week. You should come down and look at it." Needless to say, I went in and I just said how much for all of them, and now they're here in front of you. And I've been collecting rainbows ever since, and I love them to death. And that's kind of my fish story. It's basic. We won't go into like more of what I've done recently. We'll do that over other videos. But here's a short preview of an amazing like rope fish tank. at a local club member who's about to move, and they gave me a ton of fish. So remember when I said I wasn't going to get any more fish? Well, I got a bunch of new fish because they were free. So you're going to get 2 more videos coming up this week. One is going to go over everything that's new coming into the fish room, and 2, a new Plants for Profit video. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.